In this video I will show you how to knit cables. For the demonstration I will use the diagram shown in the ABC book. This is the diagram up close. The fabric that the machine will produce is a single bed fabric. The group of 6 working needles in the middle of the diagram will be the cable. The 2 groups of 7 needles on each side of the front bed will define the horizontal distance between 2 cables. You can use as many needles as you wish. The only thing you mustn't change is the needles for the cable. Except for changing the horizontal distance between the cables, you can also make them shorter or longer by knitting more or fewer rows. The 2 groups of 2 needles on the back bed will separate the cable from the rest of the knitting. The 2 needles marked with the letter X won't be used during the whole time. They need to be in working position only before knitting the last row to the right. The yarn will get caught in the hooks and this will help us to cross the stitches and make the cable. For this demonstration I will make 2 cables using the diagram, so I will raise 37 needles on the front bed, 18 to the left and 19 to the right side of the center. I will make a single bed cast on, but I won't show you this part. You can start by knitting ribbing, as it will probably be the most common way to start knitting a garment. So my racking handle is in its lowest position and I have just made the single bed cast on. The front lock is set to N and I will set the stitch size for the main stitch size for the yarn. The back lock is set to GX and the black strippers are inserted. I will knit 20 rows to make a border. As I already told you, you can knit ribbing after you make the cast on. After that you will need to transfer the stitches according to the diagram. Don't forget to make the calculations for the arrangement so the cables are evenly spaced. Reset the row counter and set the front lock to N if it has been set to another setting for the border. Set the back lock to N and the stitch size for the main stitch size. Rotate the racking handle to its highest position and transfer the stitches according to the diagram. Then put the empty needles on the front bed out of work. If you have started knitting a single bed fabric like me, you will have several empty needles on the back bed. If you leave those needles without a stitch, you will have holes at the beginning of each cable. To prevent having holes, you can put a pearl bump in the hooks of these empty needles. Now you can see the holes that will be formed if you leave these needles empty. After all stitches are transferred, return the racking handle to its lowest position. Now it should look like this. Knit 9 rows. The lock must be on the left side of the knitting. Don't reset the row counter. Now raise the 2 needles marked with the letter X on the diagram for each cable. They must be in working position only for the last row. Knit 1 row to the right. Bring the needles marked with the letter X all the way up, then close the latches and put them back out of work. Now use the triple prong tools to take all the stitches for the cables. Hold both prong tools together and move them 3 positions to the left or the right. I moved them to the left, so I need to rehang the stitches from the right one first. Now move the other prong tool to the left and put the stitches on the empty needles to the left. Now do the same to make the other cable. Make sure to cross the stitches the same way every time to get nice looking cables. Now it should look like this. At this stage you have to repeat the same steps. First knit 9 rows. The first row will be a bit stiff to knit, but it should not be very hard to move the lock. Now put the needles marked with the letter X in working position. Knit 1 row to the right and put these needles out of work. Now once again you have to cross the stitches the same way as before. I find it easier to close the latches by hand every time because most of the time the yarn is too loose. Also, when rehanging the stitches, I am using my finger to put them on the needle because if I tilt the tool upwards, the stitch may fall. Please don't forget to support me by liking the video and giving me a suggestion about which stitch technique you want me to try next. Now you can see the process from a different angle. First, I have to knit 9 rows. To make the cables shorter or longer, you may knit more or fewer rows, but in the end the lock must be on the left side of the knitting. Raise the needles on the back bed, knit 1 row and put them back out of work. Now cross the stitches with the prong tools and continue knitting. This is the final result. The cables look very good and I am very happy that I learned how to make them. You can see that there are no holes where the cables begin. And this is what the back side looks like. Now you can compare 2 samples. Instead of 9 rows, I knitted 5 to make the piece on the right, and as you can see, the braids are closer together. Also, the horizontal distance between the cables is small because I used only 2 needles to separate them instead of 7. This is another variation which you can make by using PX and pushers. These pieces are not knitted by me, but they both look very cool. The underside is that you can have only 1 cable separating or joining both halves if you want to make them solid color. If you have more cables, you will get long yarn loops on the back, or you have to make a 1x1 or a 2x2 pattern to hide the loops. That's all for today. Now have a nice day and see you in my next video.